We are up to on the bottom. Thank you. Can you hear me, or should I take off the headphones?
Now I can hear you better. For the last part was very, very low, like as if water got in your microphone.
Now it's good? All right, thank you. Okay, so we started we're on the bottom of the page. So we said that another takana they made is if a guy sells himself and his kids to a guy, we're not allowed to redeem him. Right? Why? Because we're afraid that say, what's he doing this for? Right? Meaning, well, why is this guy selling himself? Meaning, because what's going to happen is Rashi says, since the guy's constantly selling himself, he said if he does it 3 times, then he can no longer be pregnant. Since he's always doing it, this is just a scam in order to get money out of people, right? He sells himself to a guy, then he does an appeal and show. They raise money to get him out, and then that's it, right? So therefore, therefore they made a takana. That's an interesting thing because it's a mitzvah deraisa to opinion shluya. So how did the chachamim come along and say you can't do opinion shluya? Right? Do the chachamim have the power to be able to say, "Oh, don't be part of them because you're keeping them"? I don't know. The Mepharshim discussed that.
Why is it any different than any other shaval tasa that the chacham could be used misakim
right,
based?
So that's the question. Is it the same? But this is different because this shaval tasa. It's one thing not to make them do shayfer, right? There's no
They're
harm.
both mitzvahs says.
No, that's true. They're both mitzvahs says. You have to say that. That's what it is, right? You want to say the shir? Oh, sure. It's like we need a mascot. All right, there you go. So we have a new mascot. Fine. Anyway, so that's okay. That's what the Mepharshim discussed. Fine. So now we're up to the second line up at the bottom. Who gavra? A wild story here. 2 wild stories to start off the doc. So who gavra is loving after the guy? This guy sold himself to the guy. Rashi says the guy was a nation who were cannibals. Right? They ate people. I don't know how Rashi knows that, but that's
Wait, so when they had you over for dinner, they had you over for dinner?
exactly what yes. They had. Yes. So also look at maybe of Api. But again, this guy did the smart thing of selling himself to these people. So also look at maybe I'm a race, that's the Kirkin. I'm sorry, he said to him, Kirkin, meaning redeem me. Amalei, so now there's some debate over whether this is Amalei, meaning was this a back and forth with him, or was it just Amar? Whichever way you go, so Amar or Amalei, it's not Amar. Now we don't redeem him. Our play the Nekabanim, but we play to the kids. We shouldn't be cooler because of the children. Now why we play to the kids? Meaning we play to the kids after they play with the kids after the father dies because we're afraid that when the father's with the kids, the father will be able to stop the kids from becoming Azarian. Once the father dies, then they play with the kids. The cultivate Havadi is a Katla. And cultivate here where there's death. Right? So he said to him, we can't really do it. Yeah. But if it's just the kids, then you can do it. Right? So I'm related this guy's a Yisrael mummer. Right? Meaning a mummer is a guy that's not keeping the Torah. Because also the name is the Trafer. So we see him eating the Trafer. So since he's a Yisrael mummer, we shouldn't be fighting him. Right? Why are we going to be fighting? That's a major line right there. Let's say that the reason why he eats trace is not because he's trying to, he's anti. It's because he's just about fighting. Right? So I'm alay, any of the other to talk, so maybe it's going to get the other. I'm alay, but genuinely, you think it's going to be well, what's the test to know whether the guy does it outside or la'achik, where he's doing it in purpose, or he's just doing it about fighting? But what happens if you have kosher food and ultra food in front of him? The Shabbat is of offering the surah and he leaves that. It's the answer. Right, so you see, he's clearly doing it because he's anti. So Amalei said, Zil, like a shafty, to go, they're not, you have to leave. We're not going to allow you. We're not going to play you since you're doing it on purpose, the dafka to be anti. Right, so there's a major thing with this because nowadays, are most people that are irreligious, especially ones that go up to Derek, are they moving to say oven or more? No? So, I mean, it makes a big difference. If they're moving to say oven, then you save them if they're dying. Right? By the way, that's what this Gemara is clearly saying. That if a guy is not religious and he's anti and he's dying, you're not allowed to save him. That's what this Gemara says, and that is the halach. But that's only if he's anti. If he's just doing it about tithing, then we do save him. So the question is, nowadays, are people who are irreligious about tithing? So the famous Chazanish in Hilchos Trefus, he says that nowadays everybody is doing it because they're about tithing. They may hem and haw and say, yeah, the philosophy, the following is that they're just all about tithing and they're not interested in working too hard. And Mamela, they hide it behind being against the religion, but that's not what it is. All right, so that's what is that? Anyway,
I think
that's the same.
I think that Moshe was cholak with that.
I don't know if much is called. I know that it seems like this Chazanish is accepted amongst, certainly by the Kiyum. It plays in also, you can give a guy an aliyah. Can you give a guy an aliyah who's not religious? So the price can say, as long as the guy is not anti, you can give him an aliyah. If he's anti, you can't give him an aliyah. What are you saying, doctor?
I remember reading that Moshe held that such a high exposure to Yiddishkeit that it's hard to say. People say are Tinek Shnishba.
But
that was many years ago.
Tinek Shnishba is Enochanami. The Chazanish, I think, says the same thing, but there's a difference. This is not just Tinek Shnishba. This is whether the guy's a Mumar L'Tei Oven or Mumar L'Hafez. Right? Meaning they're Mumar L'Tei Oven nowadays. That's what Chazanish is saying. There's so much availability to Taira, and nobody is too philosophical about anything, including us Yidden, unfortunately, right? How much stuff are we doing by rote without really thinking so much about what we're doing? So the Chazanish says the same thing applies to the people that are irreligious, and they're just doing it because they're doing it l'tei oven, right? Okay, so that's so that's a major Indian. Now, Tam, what is the issur of cannibalism? What's the issur of cannibalism? It's not pashut that it's maybe a lav. Bottom line is if you have a choice to eat a person or to eat treif. The person's dying. Nobody should know from such a shayla, right? You have two options: eat treif or eat a person. Pashtus is you should eat a person first because a person it's much less of it. It's maybe a suffix of a lav. Is the food so bad here? We got guys stuck in the rain, so they're listening in. So we got to give them some entertainment.
Is there or an issur of Avram ben Achai?
No, we're talking about if the guy's dead. The guy died. I'm not saying you shouldn't kill your friend. No, that's worse. Saying, you mean you want to just rip a limb off him and eat that? I don't know. I don't know if that's worse. We're talking about if the guy's already dead.
I don't want to.
Everybody, Avi, every single person.
Avi, I ain't going anywhere with you anytime soon, Avi.
I thought he was asking that. Why should a human being be any different when it comes to shechita? How are you going to eat a human being if he had no shechita on him?
I don't know if a human being needs shechita.
That's what I asked. That's what
what I thought you were asking.
You mean you're talking about that? You know.
Why is he in a vela then?
Even if he needed shechita, if you had a nevela that has more simone kashrus, it seems like the nevela would be better than a human because it has more simone kashrus to him. So you found it. So you found a dead chazer has one simon on it.
The human has no sim on him.
Right. So I'd say maybe the chaz is better.
It could, I don't know. It could be. I think it's a suffix of a lav. That I don't remember. I didn't. I was supposed to look into it. Of course, I forgot to look into it today. But it's a shaila whether it's even a lav. Yeah. Anyways, okay. So now we get into this. We get into this story of Reish Lakish. So Reish Lakish was a strong guy. Right, so Reish Lakish Zavin Nafshe Luludai. So he decided he's going to go after these cannibals and he's going to wipe them out. Right now, right off the bat, look at the top Tosis. Tosis says, "Kaidim shechaza lemutar." Reish Lakish was about tshuva. So this story must have happened before he became about tshuva. The Mustama lo hayim mezalzel ba'atzul kol kach. Because if he's already from, he wouldn't be mezalzel in himself to do this, to put his life. I think it means to put his life at risk.
Also, he'd be weaker. He becomes weaker when he comes down the Chacham.
I hear that. Right. So then, right. So he wouldn't have done this. So Reish Lakish must have done this out of being a good Samaritan, not from a Yiddishkeit point of view. So Reish Lakish Zavan Nafshel Ludai. He sold himself to the Ludai. Shoko ba'adei chayosav galgalta. So he took with him when they captured him. He took a bag and a galgalta, some sort of a galgal, something that's round. Right. It's a ball. Amar Gemiri, they have like a Messiah, the Yom Basra, on the last day of a person's life. Before they're gonna
sounds like a skull. The gold is a skull. No?
A gold is a skull. That's true, but I think it comes from the same word that it's round. Rashi says, "Eagle shall even, I shall iferes b'seicha." Rashi is made out of a stone or is made out of dirt, right? So anyway,
some people's heads are full of dirt.
That's true. So Amar, he said, Gemiri, the Yom Basra, they have a Messiah then on the last day of a person's life called the Boy Minaya Abdillah, whatever the person wants, right? What do they call it? A last wish?
Last meal.
Kosher. Ki heichi delechol, but he so what he did is they gave him this last thing, so that he should they should be Michael for killing him. No, it's treif, but you can take it. It's okay, whatever. Yeah, the leichel on it, so that in order that he should be Michael for the blood. So Yom Basra Amrulay on the last day when it was his turn to be killed, Reish Lakish was about to be killed. So he said, "My nichalach, what do you want?" Amrulu, he said to them, "Beina akamtinchu v'isvinchu. I want to tie you up and sit you down. B'chol chad ninaychu amchein, and I want to hit every one of you guys. So chayso palga. I'm sorry. B'chol chad ninaychu amshi chayso palga. I want to hit each one of you guys 1.5 times. So continue. So of course they listened, right? So continue v'isvinu kol chad minayu." And he tied up each one and sat them down. So when he hit them, his neshama went out. Right now, it sounds like he died. Right? Nafak nishmase sounds like the guy died from one hit from Reish Lakish, but that can't be based on the next words. So charkinu l'shine. He basically he like clenched his teeth. Amar lei, so how are you clenching your teeth if you're dead? Right, so Amalei, so Reish Lakish said to him, "You're laughing at me, right? So Akati Pashloch Gabi Palgat the Chais. I still have another half a hit to hit you with. So don't be gritting your teeth and laughing at me." So Katlinu Kulu, and then he killed them all. Nafak, and then he left us and he came. So he wiped out Reish Lakish with this story, wiped out the entire this whole cannibal crew. Okay, then the next story with Reish Lakish. So let's see. So Yosef Ka'achel V'Shasi, he sat down and he ate and he drank. Amrle Barte, so his daughter told him, Loibas Midi Lemezgale, don't you want to sleep on something? Amrle Biti Crazy Kri. My stomach is my pillow. Right? Because he must have slept on his stomach. Oh, you're not supposed to sleep on your stomach. I don't know the pshat of that. Anyways, so he didn't need a bed. So Kinoch Nafshi, when he was nifta, Shava Kava the Merika, he left over 1 kav of karkum. Karkum is saffron, right? Some sort of spice. That's all he left over. That's all that was left over from Rish Lakish was 1 thing of spice. Kara Nafshe, and he called on himself, Va'azvu la'cherim chelam, and he said that they left over, he left for others, he left over some chel, some of his belongings, which means that he was upset that he even left over a little bit from this world. Meaning, Rish Lakish is telling his daughter, like, there's no point in me amassing things because it's all going. No, I'm dying anyway. So what's the reason why I should do these things? Right. So Mamela, he left. So Mamela, he didn't want to be benefiting from anything. So he left over 1 little thing of this karkum, and that karkum was means he's basically saying that karkum, had he not left over that karkum, let's say it took him 2 minutes of Torah to be able to buy that karkum. So therefore, that was 2 minutes of Torah they were left in this world, right? It sort of reminds me, like, did you read about, he was nifter a year ago. What's the name? Who was about Tshuva Meretz Yisrael? The actor?
Uri Zohar.
Uri
Uri
Zohar.
Zohar.
And actually, I just thought the same thing.
No, you did? Baruch
Yeah.
Shekivanti, doctor.
Me
Baruch
too,
Shekivanti.
yeah, because I just thought of his, if you ever watch his videos and his stories, it's just very inspiring.
Yeah, so at the end of his life, he lived in a machsan. He lived with nothing. He lived in a 1 room, and his joke was that it's gewaldic. He doesn't have to get out of his chair. He can wash his hands and cook supper, all and his bed and his chair, all in the same thing. That's the way he was. He sounds mamash like Rish Lakish. The Chavetz Chaim writes about this a lot. Like anything, all your possessions, every possession that you have comes at the expense of Torah. Right? You know that story with the Chavetz Chaim, somebody came to him and said, Where's your nice furniture? He says, he says, well, where's your nice furniture? He says, because I'm just traveling. So the Chavetz Chaim told him back, I'm also just traveling. Right? I'm only here temporarily. Why should I right? So basically, we have that in the country. Like nobody buys anything new here. What are you going to put something? You're going to buy something new for this trash that we live in?
You do. You just return it at the end of the summer. That's all.
Very good.
No. You didn't see all.
Tiago,
You
go
didn't
see
see
some
all
of
the
those
new
developers.
houses
I
here.
beg to differ.
There's hundreds and hundreds of new houses over here. First class.
No, I'm talking about us guys. I'm talking about us old people that are still in the dumps.
Yeah,
Right.
the problem with the shot you're saying is because this Meiser was Reish Lakish. We learned that was before he was Chayz B'tshuva.
No, that was the first Meiser. Then at the end of his life, this is at the end of his life. The second Meiser is at the end of his life, Rachel. There's 2 Meisers.
Nothing to do with the Ludim.
No, this is a new story. The Yosef Ka'achel, 4 lines before the Mishnah. I think it's a new Meiser. The new Meiser.
Okay.
Right. So anyway, but that's the bottom line is whatever the more things you leave over after you die, the more that means that you spend money, you spend time amassing those things, and you never benefited from it. Right.
Okay.
Anyways, okay. So that's the Busser / that part. Now we get into the sugya of, and we had it a little bit before, but when a guy buys land in Eretz Yisrael, does the Shemitah apply to it? Does Shumas and Maises apply to it? All that type of stuff. Right. So the Mishnah says, a guy who sells his field to a guy, so lekeach or maybe men bikurim if tikkun olam. He has to take and bring bikurim from the guy's field because of tikkun olam. Now, right off the bat, you see that gimel. I don't know if you have a gimel or asterisk, or whatever it is. There's major girsa issues here. What's going on? We're saying that if a guy sells his field to a guy in Eretz Yisrael, obviously, which he's not supposed to do. So the way our Mishnah says it, we force him to buy the fruits from the guy to bring the bikurim. Bikurim is the first fruits of every year. Right? You have to bring them out to Eretz Yisrael, and you say the psukim, etc., etc. Right? Those are the psukim from that we say by the by the Seder, right? So that's Bikurim. So the way our Mishnah's Girsa has it is that we force the guy to buy back the fruits from the guy for Tikkun Olam, so that people will not end up selling their fields to Goyim in Eretz Yisrael. Some say that he's not the one forced to. Just means a Yid. You got to make sure that any Yid buys that from him, so we shouldn't lose out on the Bikurim. Right?
What's the big deal? What is the big deal? You take one apple from an orchard of apples, so that's as Elad Varm Shein Lem Shir. Bikurim is one of those things. So there's no shir. You took one apple. Have a nice day.
Yeah, I hear you're saying. So you just be Mekayim. I guess because of the headache, Shabbai. Right.
Oh.
Right, still a Pepsi. You got to go back. You got to buy it from. You got to schlep it up to Yerushalayim, right?
See, okay, so one peanut, one almond.
Okay, I hear. Fair point. Which is a good question. But anyway, so that's the two gears. Either the guy who sold the field has to do it, or another Yid has to do it. Fine, but we do it because of Tikkun Olam. Fine. So Zok Gemara, Amar Rava, Ava Pisha ain't Kinyan Levi. So here's the major machlokes. Even though there's no kinyan to a guy in Eretz Yisrael, lafki midei meiser to remove it from meiser, meaning even though a guy buys a field in Eretz Yisrael, he still have to take off chumas and meiser. So now obviously there's a big nafkamina with this. Is the heter mechira for shmita, right? You have the heter mechira for shmita. If you hold of this shita that selling it to a guy does not stop it from chumas and meiser and shmita, then the whole heter mechira in Eretz Yisrael is as a non-starter. Right, we mentioned it a couple of days ago, but again, so what would be, and the same thing in Eretz Yisrael, you say, oh, Chumas and Maisis, they came from a guy's field, so what? You still have to take out Chumas and Maisis.
Well,
so that's the first sheet.
What was wasn't that Rabbi Yitzchak Elchanan's psak?
What to sell? Yeah. So we have to see who we paskin like.
No, I'm saying, but I don't think Lamaisa nowadays they use heter mechira. I think they use other heterim. They don't use heter mechira.
The Shemitah?
Yeah, I don't think. I think his psak was not in the Skabel in Eretz Yisrael originally, at least by the Yushalmis over there. I think they came up with other heterim at the end of the day for Eretz Yisrael. I don't think they use heter mechira.
I think the Mizrahi do. But anyway, okay, whatever it is. But if you go with the sheet, the whole mechira doesn't start. So we'll see. So Amar Rab, I will be saying, can you learn that a kinyan to a guy in Eretz Yisrael doesn't remove you from Masa? Meaning there is such a thing as a guy being kained. It's just not going to stop the Masa and every other mitzvah, all other mitzvahs are tuyas for others. Shenemar kili kala kili haaretz. Hashem says the land is mine. Li kedushas haaretz. To me, it's kedushas haaretz. Aval yesh kinyan levi kachavim be'Eretz Yisrael. But there is a kinyan in the land for a guy he's allowed to dig up the land and destroy it. There you go, Paris, the song of the Daf, but it hasn't been one in a while. Right? So it's saying, meaning don't think that it's when we say it's not considered the guys, it applies to everything. No. It applies to Trumas and Maises and Shemitah, etc., that he doesn't get it, but the land itself belongs to him, and he could dig as many holes as he wants and destroy it, etc., etc. That's the sheet of Rabbah. Rabbi Lazar, Aimer, even though there is a kinyan for an Eretz Yisrael to remove the ma'aser, meaning and now a guy's field doesn't require chumas ma'aser shemitah. Shenemar tigancha, it says your grain, and not the grain of a guy. That's the way he's teaching the pasuk. Aval ain't kinyan levikam Eretz Yisrael lafa paras shita namaris. He says exactly opposite, but he does not have a kinyan in order to dig holes. Shenemar lashem haaretz. The land belongs to Hashem. So therefore, a guy can never be considered like he actually owns the land of Eretz Yisrael, and therefore he does not have the right to dig holes and to destroy it. However, if he does buy it, then his grain and his fruits and vegetables, all that stuff is not going to require Trumas and Maisus. Right? But what's the machlok? Like we said. They learned the pasuk. It means your grain. You have to take off Trumas Ma'aser from your grain, but not the grain of a guy. It doesn't mean we don't touch it as the goincha, your grain. Meaning it goes with who finished off preparing the stuff. If the grains, if the guy is the one that finished preparing it, then it would be potter. But if a yid is was the one that ends up doing it, then it's going to be chayav, right? Fine. So that's a machlokes. So I'm a Rabba Minah. Rabba says, how do I know that a guy's land still requires trumas and maisus as if it's owned by a yid? The Tanan, because we're in the Mishnah, leket v'ashikra v'apeil. So leket is basically the stuff that when a guy is gathering all the stalks, if up to 2 pieces falls out of his hands, he's not allowed to go. He's not allowed to go pick it up. Shikha is if he forgot, meaning he passed by. Now, many people get confused with the difference between leket and shikha. Leket means that he gathered it in his hand and he drops up to 2 pieces. If he drops 3 pieces, he's allowed to pick it up. If he drops 2 pieces, he can't pick it up. That's leket. Shikha is if as he's walking, he left 2 pieces on the ground. So up to 2 pieces is considered forgotten. And pay is the corner of the field. So all those 3, chayavim and meiser. So if it's leket and shikha of a goy, it's chayav meiser. Meaning normally leket, shikha, and pay, since it's given to aniyim, nobody has to remove chumas and meiser from it. Meaning if a guy's an ani, he goes to a fellow's field and he takes the grain, he does not have to give off chumas and meiser from it. Right? Ella imkain hefker, unless the guy made them hefker. If he made them hefker, then you would have to take out chumas and meiser. So now what's going on here? It says that it's leket shikha pay of a guy. Yechayev and meiser, unless he makes it hefker. So who's owning it and who's not owning it? What's the case? If you say that the land belonged to Yisrael, and a guy jumped into the field and took all these things, Ella imkain hifker, then when it says that it's not chayiv and leket shikhan peya, unless it was hifker, ham nifkari v'kaimi. The definition of leket shikhan peya is that it's hefker. So what do you mean if the yid made it hefker? Right? Meaning again, if this land belonged to a yid and a guy came and took the leket shikhan peya, so we're saying that it's not chayiv and meiser if the yid made it hefker. Of course, he made it hefker. That is the definition of leket shikhan peya. Must be it's a guy's field and a yid is the one that gathered it. So time at the hifker, and that's only because the guy. Now, why is the guy making leket shikhan peya? I guess because he decides to be a from a guy. He decides he's going to make leket shikhan peya, and the yid comes and grabs it. But then we said it only works if you made it hefker. Time at the hifker, halay hifker chayiv. If the guy didn't make it hefker, then it would be chayiv. So what do you see? That the guy's land in Eretz Yisrael makes it considered like it's like a yid, and he still has to. It still is chayiv and all the matnas aniyim and matnas aniyim, matnas kahuna, everything. So my answer is loy loylam to Yisrael. We're really talking about where the land belonged to a yid, and a guy grabbed it. Just that you said it's already hefker. Need the mifkari adai to the Yisrael. Granted, it's hefker adas Yisrael adai to David Kechavim. Did he make it hefker on the tas of the guy? He didn't. Now this is a major lumdisha thing here. Watch out, the Gershon. Watch out. Yeah, meaning what happened here? The yid made his karka hefker. Right, he made his grain hefker, but only to yidden, not to goyim. Right, you hear what they're saying? I mean, we had this. I forgot where Pesachim maybe. I don't remember where we had this, but you see that there's such a thing as a partial hefker. How do you have a partial hefker? Right? If I make something hefker, that means I am renouncing ownership on this thing. Right? You know what it's saying? That's what hefker is. So I'm saying, no. It's hefker to you, but to you, it's not hefker.
The ACLU would have a big run on this, except it's ACLU, not.
Granted, Rachamim. It's true. It's right. They're gonna have. There's no equality over here whatsoever, right? But it's an interesting thing how you go. You see from this Gemara very clear. You can make things hefker, but only for certain people and not for others.
But see,
Okay.
Yaakov, maybe
Yeah.
that's only true because there are different dinim when it comes to Goyim and Kinyanim, meaning they don't necessarily have the same classifications as Jews when it comes to Kinyanim and when it comes to being involved in the mamnas of Yidden. Therefore, you could be machalik in being mafker to Yidden, not the Goy. I don't know if you could go so as far as say that you could be mafker for one Yid and not a Yid, and to not another Yid, meaning to have a chati hefker when it comes to different Yidden. Maybe you could be machalik between Goyim and Yidden, but mechtes you be machalik between Yidden themselves.
I hear. No, so
I think it's a bigger chiddush to say you could be mafker to some Yidden and not other Yidden. I don't know if that's possible.
Could be. It could. No, I think we
That's not
have.
hefker.
You don't remember where we had it, Akiva? I can't remember. I know we had the sugya. Maybe it was in Pesachim with chametz, being mafker chametz. Is that possible? Is this better now without my headphones, or worse?
Better. It's much better.
Better. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. The guys all left the porch now. It stopped raining, so now I could. I know. I can't remember where we had this sugi before. Okay, but I hear Akiva's point that maybe only between Yidden it's different than with the guy. I don't know. Okay, Tasha. So, anyways, we thought we had a proof to Rabbah that Goyish land still requires the Truma Matnas Kahuna and whatever, all the Matanas, and we disproved it. So now we try another one. Tashima, Yisrael Shalakach Sada Me'ayve Kechavim, a Yisrael that bought a field from a guy. But let's say he bought it before it grew a third. So before it grew a third, it's not chayiv in anything. And then he went and he sold it back to the guy after it already grew a third, which means that once it grew a third, now it's chayiv. So it was chayiv when it was under the jurisdiction, I guess if that's the word, of the yid, and then he went and gave it to the guy. Chayev is b'maises, and it's chayiv in maises. Shekvar neschayva, because it was chayiv under the yid when the yid owned it. So it's mashma neschayva in only when it grew a third. Loy neschayva loy. But if it didn't by the yid, then the guy's property is not going to be chayiv. Meaning it's only because it grew a third under the yid, right? But mashma, if it didn't grow a third under the yid, then there would be no matnas aniyim, matnas kuna, etc., etc. So it sounds like Rebbe Lazar, not like Rabbah. So one answers, this is talking about in Syria, because of our kivush yachid loishme kivush, and we say that a private conquering is not considered conquering. I mean, Syria definitely was not part of the boundaries that were given to Yeshua and Eretz Yisrael. Right? Certainly, that was not part of it. But then they went and they conquered. David HaMelech did some, right? So the question is that does that get the chashivas of Eretz Yisrael or not? So we're saying that this story with this field, that the yid, the guy's stuff was not considered like it's in Eretz Yisrael. That was talking about in Syria. So there we're going to say that the guy's stuff doesn't have any kedusha, but in Eretz Yisrael itself it would. Okay, fine. Tashima Yisrael v'avikam shelaku sada b'shutfus. You have a Yisrael and a guy who took a sada in a partnership, meaning we're partners. Now, how are you going to split it? So Teva, say I split this. Teva v'chulim u'Rav and Zevazeh. Divrei Rab and Shimon and Gamliel. Right, another favorite of Gershon over here. So it's talking about Tevel. Not a favorite of yours?
It's Divrei Rabbi.
I'm sorry, Divrei Rebbe. I'm sorry. Thank you. Yes, yeah, Divrei Rebbe. Yeah. Right, I told you Gershon on top of this sugya here, right? So this is Rebbe, right? Rebbe held that Tevel and Chulin, it's mixed together, meaning when you have a guy, so the assumption is this is going to be the Gemara's proof. The assumption is that the guy's grain does not require chumas and maisus, etc., and the yid's does. So now, how do you go separate it? Do you just tell the yid to just calculate half the field in his calculations of chumas and maiser, or do we say no? You have to look at each piece as if it's split. So Rebbe holds that it's split together, right? And meaning each piece needs to be split. That's Shitas Rebbe. A guy is potter, and Yisrael is chayev. So meaning you just take half and then the Yid just adds his half into his regular Chumas and Maisus calculations and separates the Chumas and
There's
Maisus.
no Indian like Brera when it comes to this.
Oh, it's exact. Very good. So next line in the Gemara. So Adkan like Pligi Alit the Marsavar Yesh Brera Marsavar Ain Brera. The whole machlokes is whether we say Brera or we don't say Brera. Meaning, if you say Brera, Brera means retroactive choice. Right? So if you say, Rav Shimon Gamliel is going to say that each one gets half. So we're going to say once they split every grain, so then limafreya, meaning retroactively, we know which half belonged to the Yid, which half belonged to the guy, and therefore he could just make that calculation. But Marsav, Rebbe holds, ain't Brera. There's no Brera. So since there's no Brera, we cannot retroactively say each one was split down the middle. But according to both shitas, we're saying that the guy's part of the field that he owns does not have Maisa. Right? Meaning both they're having a machlokes, whether you say Brera, you could say retroactive splitting, not retroactive, that's very nice. But both of them are clearly in agreement that there's no Trumas and Maisas on the guys.
Yaakov, would every single shutvis have a problem like this according to Rav Shimon Gamliel? Stam, like how am I ever ma'aser if I have a shutvis and I take half the grain? How am I ever ma'aser something that's partially not mine? Every single grain, the part of it's not mine, as he's saying, because it ain't brera. When in a normal shutvis, at the end of the day, when we split it, do we decide that this is fully mine? How weit is ein brera when it comes to shutvis?
I'm saying, what else? When else would there be enough kamina?
I'm asking if you hold ein brera, does that also mean, does it go so weit to say that you can't, whenever your mechalik part of it might not be yours?
Maybe.
So then how am I ever ma'aser? Don't I have to be ma'aser for my stuff onto my stuff? You have to make it tanai whenever you do shutvis dika meiser.
But you only have a half a problem by two Yidden who are Shutvim. It's all Chiyuv.
I know it's Chiyuv, but it's not mine.
It's a bigger problem. Before they divide it up, it belongs to both of them.
And when they divide it up, you don't know what's yours.
Before they divide it up, they can take Meiser together.
Oh, if you take Meiser together, let's say you divide it up, you don't take Meiser. That's what I'm asking.
So you say you have the same problem with
right.
Yerusha. That's where the main place is by Brera, by Yerusha, right?
I'm saying even by Shutvis, Stam Shutvis. If you divide it up before taking off Meiser, you have the same problem.
It could be. I'm not sure, but it could very well be that you have that problem. Anyways, right, so the Gemara says this kasha, so you see clearly, according to both Shitas, Rebbe and Rav Shimon Gamliel, the guy's property does not need Trumas and Maisas taken off. So the Gemara answers, Achanami B'Surya, we're talking about in Surya, V'Kasavar Kivush, Yachid Leishmei Kivush. The private conquering is not considered Kivush, and therefore it's not part of Eretz Yisrael, so even the Yid's part doesn't really need Trumas and Maisas. Fine. So I'm Rav Bar Avin, Toshima, Hamaychas Sadei Eloi V'Kechavim. So if a guy sells his field to a guy, like, right, this is our Mishnah, like, maybe Bikurim, he has to take and bring Bikurim, make Tikkun Oilam, because Tikkun Oilam. Make Tikkun Oilam in, it sounds like 1 second. The reason why you have to take off Bikurim from the guy's property is because of Tikkun Oilam. Midaraisa loy, but Midaraisa doesn't need. So you see that even our Mishnah is saying, why, if you say that a guy, his property doesn't require, if you say that a guy's property does not require Chumas and Maisers, so then what do you mean Tikkun? I'm sorry, if you say that a guy's property, if you say guy's property doesn't need it, so then it's Tikkun Oilam. But if you hold that a guy's property needs Chumas and Maisers to take it off of it, so then it's a Daraisa, it's not a Tikkun Oilam. Meaning this guy sold his property to a guy. He's got to give Bikurim because a guy's property has to give Bikurim. It's a Daraisa. So Gemara's teretz is very interesting, which the way a takanas chachamim come about. Zamar Rav Ashi, shtei takanas haver. There was actually 2 takanas. Meikara hava ma'asim midaraisa. Really, originally, when the guy sold his land to the guy, he needed to be midaraisa. Kivan dechazah dekom mikri mizamnim. Since they saw that people sometimes, mikri from the word keri, would sometimes go and sell it anyways because they needed the money. The Savi because they knew that you're still going to give Bikurim. So they said to themselves, well, if a guy's property still needs Trumas and Mises and Bikurim taken off, so then what's so bad to sell him the Karka? We're not losing out anything. Right, so then they would sell their land. So tkinu the loylaisu. So then they didn't want people doing this. They didn't want people selling the land. So they said, okay, no more bringing trumas and maisus, which again is them being mavatal mitzvah saseh, possible mitzvah saseh. But then what happened? Given the chazud the mandala sagile mazvin, then they said if they saw that people who, anyways, they couldn't afford it. They needed to sell their land. They needed to liquidate their land. And then the land sat by the Goyim, and it never was given back to Yidden. So then they went back and they made the takana. So basically, really, midairaisa should have been given. The Chacham came along and nixed the dairaisa because people were selling their land to the Goyim because they thought that, okay, since we're giving Chumas and Maisis and Bikurim from the land, so therefore it must be not bad to sell it to them. So Chacham said, okay, let them not give Bikurim and Chumas and Maisis like this, the people will see that it's a problem. But then the people are selling it anyways. So then they said, okay, once they're selling it anyways, we might as well tell them that a guy's land does need Chumas and Maisus and Bikurim, and that's maybe then they'll stop selling it to the guy. So it was a two-step process. So really one step is the Raisa, one step is the Rabban. Fine. That's the end of the Sugya. But Etzem we paskin that a guy's property in Eretz Yisrael requires Chumas and Maisus and Shemitah and all that. That's Be'etzem the way you paskin. So then how do you end up even starting with the Het Mechira for Shemitah? So basically, what the Paiskim say, the Beis Yosef, I think, he says, how does it go again? He says that if it's sold to them with some sort of kavana or I don't know, something, there's a loophole. There's a loophole, even though Ba'etzem we paskin that it requires Chumas and Maisis. Yeah, there's a loophole having something to do with it's like a partnership with the Yid, something like that, and therefore it wouldn't be a problem. Fine. Now we start another sugya, which is basically you have to bring bikurim. That's the first fruits you have to bring bikurim, and you have to read all the psukim, right? But what happens if a guy he doesn't buy the land, he just buys the fruits from the guy, right? So then, does he make the bracha? Because the bracha is not going to be true. Because the bracha says that, what's the lashon of the bracha again? What's the bracha? I don't remember. But in the bracha, it sounds like he owns the field. So you can't say that bracha if you don't own the field, you only own the fruits. You know, a guy goes to a friend and says, I'm not buying the field off you. The guy says to him, I don't want to sell you the real estate. I believe in 10 years from now, this real estate is going to be worth a lot more money. You want to buy the fruits off me? Gesundheit, you can buy the fruits off me, but you're not getting the field. Right? So does that, when that guy brings the first fruits, the bikurim, does he need to say the bracha or not? So that's a machlokes. All he did was sell the field to Paris. He has to bring, and he reads the psukim. Right? Maybe he brings it, but he doesn't read the psukim. What's a pshat? Because when you buy the peiros, it's if you buy the actual field. Right? So therefore, it's as if he owns the field, even though he doesn't own the field, he just owns the peiros, but therefore he can make the bracha. Maybe he brings and he doesn't read. Kinyan peiros lavke kinyan aguf, because just because you own the peiros does not mean it's not the equivalent of owning the land. Fine. So that's the basic machlokes. It's going to be today's daf and the majority of tomorrow's daf also. So Eser Rabbi Yochanan Rish Lakish Rabbi Yochanan has the kasher Rish Lakish Ula Beischa. It's Beisecha. I'm sorry. It says into your house, right? Meaning in the bracha by Bikurim, it says Beisecha, and you're happy with the Bikurim, which Beisecha usually means a wife. Malamed Shadam maybe Bikurei Ishtay Bekaira. A person can bring the Bikurim of his wife, and he could read the psukim. Now, what does it mean, the bikurim of his wife? Like we've had many times. This nechsei tzayin barzel and nechsei milug. All right, so we're talking about here where she brings property into the marriage. The husband runs the property, but she's guaranteed. Nechsei tzayin barzel means she's guaranteed not to lose money, but she's also guaranteed not to make money. But she knows that it's in a solid place, the field, but the husband gets the payers. So now if the husband gets the payers and he brings into the field, he brings it up for the bikurim. So is that called his? And he can say the psukim, or is it his wife's? So we're saying that the Beis Secha tells you that it's considered his and his wife's, and Mameli could say it. So what do you see from this? That it's not really his, and he could still say the psukim. He only has the payers. He doesn't have the field. The field still belongs to his wife. No, because it says there a special pasuk Beis Secha. So Mamela, if it's his wife's, it's allowed, but not if it's a different person's. Some say the opposite. The opposite. The Gemara is the opposite. Right. The first pshat was Rabbi Yochanan asking Rish Lakish. Here it's Rish Lakish asking Rabbi Yochanan. Lu Beis Secha. What do we learn out from the word Beis Secha? Maybe bikuri ishta v'kaida. That a person could bring the bikurim of his wife. Hasam hu d'chsiv ulu Beis Secha. There it's because it says Beis Secha. Ava ba'alma loi. But stamazoi, if it wouldn't say Beis Secha, then you wouldn't be able to. Meaning, if you're just bringing the payers, you don't own the karka, you don't say the psukim. So it's a kasha on Rabbi Yochanan. Time of the din nami me'achakam. He says, that's exactly where I say my din from here. He's saying this, that it says only a wife. Then that's how I know that everybody else not. Right, let's do just one more kasha. So Eisvei. Right, so Rabbi Yochanan asked Rish Lakish asked another kasha. Rabbi Yochanan, the guy's traveling to Eretz Yisrael to bring the bikurim, to bring the first fruits. And he has his wife's fruits. And then he heard that his wife died. Now, what happens when a wife dies? So the husband now becomes the husband's. The fruits are actually his husband's. Meaning, when he went up there to Israel, it was really his wife's fruit. I mean, he had the rights to the fruit, but the field that the fruit grew on belonged to the husband. Right? Maybe Vikaira, he brings and he says the psukim. Mashma Mesa in. It's only because his wife died. Loi Mesa Loi. But if his wife didn't die, then he doesn't bring the psukim because really he doesn't have the karka. He only has the payros. So that's a kasha. So the one answers, Who did Avagav the Loi Mesa? No, really, it's even if the wife didn't die, he's going to read the psukim. Well, Mesa tzrichaleim, but we need the case of Mesa to teach a chiddush. Why? Sakat Chamina. Ligzar mishum de Rabbi Yosef bar Chanina. Maybe we should make it Xera because of this din. Rabbi Yosef bar Chanina. Domer Rabbi Yosef bar Chanina. Bitzaron b'shigron b'yad shliach. If a guy gathers all the fruits or the grain, and then he sends it with a shliach, umeis shliach b'derech, and then the shliach dies. Meaning he sent his bikurim with a shliach. He couldn't make it to Eretz Yisrael, so he sends his stuff with a shliach. Maybe ve'ena koira then, and the shliach dies, and then what he does is he brings the bikurim. The owner brings it, but he doesn't read it. Why? Shenemer v'lakachta, you take it be'evesa, and you have to bring it. Ad she tehei lekicha v'hava be'echad. The taking of the fruits or the grain and the bringing has to be with the same person, and you don't have that. So you would think, so it's just like by a shliach, it's a problem. So maybe the same thing if the husband brings the fruits of the fields that belong to the wife. So maybe you would think that that's also like a shliach. And even though the wife dies, the husband should not say it's like a shliach dying, whatever. It's a shlichus. So memela, he should not say the psukim kamash malan. Then we say no, it's different. The husband with a wife is different than a shliach. By a shliach, you would not say it. By a husband and wife, you would say it. Okay, this sugi will continue tomorrow. Bezos Hashem. All right, the items should have themselves a fine night. Stay safe.
Tomorrow we start the second chelik of Art Scroll in the Gittin. Everybody needs a middle.
Very good.
Ahmed Beis is the second.
Tomorrow is a double siyum, right? Tomorrow's a double siyum, right? We got a siyum on the Perek and a siyum on chelik Aleph Art Scroll. We got two.